Good morning, everyone. My name is Damon Cates, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the University of Chicago's Alumni Association. And on behalf of the college, it's my pleasure to welcome the classes of 2016 and 2017, plus over 225 alumni that have joined us today. So thank you very much for being here. I want to just share a few things about the Alumni Association that I want to make sure that everyone takes note of. First off, we are an expansive, all-inclusive alumni association, so no matter where you find yourself around the globe, there are many ways to be involved and engaged. From regional programming to career programming to just simply social programming, there's many, many ways to be involved. And today is another example of how our alumni come back and give to the university in many different ways. And I encourage all of you to do what you might expect today. One thing is to take the next step and think about your career, but the other is sort of take advantage of the network and take advantage of the opportunities to connect, to learn something new, to try out a new idea, and to just make connections that I have heard firsthand in all of my travels around the world talking to alumni, that it's amazing how one conversation today can last a lifetime. So I encourage all of you to meet as many people and to connect with as many people as possible. In addition to that, the other thing I'd like to encourage all of you to do, and this is a plea on behalf of the Alumni Association, is to also stay connected with us. Please let us know where you are and what you're up to and what your career path is taking. The best way for us to be able to connect you with other alumni or other ways to get engaged with the university is if we know what you're up to professionally. So whether that be to update your information in the database or just make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date, those are terrific ways for you to stay connected to the university and to each other. And then lastly, I just want to make sure that if you are locating elsewhere or with our alumni, wherever you find yourselves, that there are many ways to connect not only in person, but virtually with the university. And I encourage all of you to keep an eye out for some exciting new programs that we're going to be rolling out over the next year or so for even more ways, enhanced ways for you to connect with the institution no matter where you live or what you're up to. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the co-chair, class of 2016, Marin Lowe.
Good morning. My name is Marin Lowe, and I am the third-year student chair of Taking the Next Step. On behalf of the college, the staff, and my fellow student coordinators, I would like to welcome you to the 18th annual Taking the Next Step. At this time, I would like to thank the college for giving us this opportunity to network with our alumni. I would like to thank the nearly 250 alumni volunteers we have here today, taking time out of their weekends to share their wisdom and expertise with us. We have an incredible and unique opportunity before us today, something that is not offered at every elite undergraduate institution. As brunch is served, please continue asking questions. Ask about majors, coursework, RSOs, summer experiences. Ask the alumni if they would have done anything differently. This roundtable is an opportunity to hear about an individual's career path and gain their insights into their particular industry. Last January, I registered for this event because of the padfolio and free food. But I left the roundtable with a great connection to a professional in the medical research field, in addition to a full stomach and a sleek padfolio. After brunch, there is an outstanding array of panels for you to attend, a great opportunity to use your new padfolio and learn even more about the professional industries represented here today. When you leave today, bring your Taking the Next Step program back to Hyde Park with you, and don't hesitate to reach out to any of the alumni listed there over the next few days and weeks. Please remember to thank the alumni for volunteering today, and again, thank you for attending. Enjoy your meal. Please join me in thanking and welcoming John W. Boyer, Dean of the College, and Martin A. Ryerson Distinguished Service Professor in History. Dean Boyer has served as Dean of the College for over 20 years and is currently in his 5th term. During his tenure, he has been instrumental in improving the quality of student life, including the creation of programs like Taking the Next Step. Without further ado, Dean Boyer.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come and stand in front of a crowd of about 1,000 people, to all of whom are seeking gainful employment or who already have it. Taking the Next Step began about 18 years ago. I say about because the history is a little clouded. It was 18 or 19 years ago, but I remember the day that Bill Michael, who was somewhere in the room, former director of student activities and associate dean of the college, and I were thinking about how we could help students, and we had the idea that we would maybe throw a party or something, and we had a meeting with a group of students, and they basically said in a very polite sense, "Thank you very much, but we don't need any parties that you guys could throw for us," which I took to be a very good and healthy thing. And I said, "Well, is there anything else we could do?" And they said, "Well, yeah, you could help us get some jobs." And I said, "Well, okay, well, we could probably do that." And so the first year of Taking the Next Step, we started in Idenoise Hall, and then we ended up down here, actually, in a hotel. And it's one of these things, we were certain that nobody would come, and actually 200 people, I mean, it was astonishing, 200 people showed up on a very cold Saturday morning to meet with some alums to discuss career options. And that was the beginning of an odyssey that's been really quite wonderful, leading to a very large and impressive gathering with hundreds of alumni and almost 1,000 students joining the event this year. It's an event that could not take place without the support and help of many of our alumni, and we're very grateful that so many of alums have come out today. There are a number of faculty in the room today, my colleagues from the faculty, and we're very grateful that you're here as well. And of course, the College Programming Office and the Student Organizing Committee and the Career Services Office. It's been really a collective event in many, many ways. And I think the theme of collectivism or collectivity is a very important one. You know, in 2015, that's the year we're now in, we just turned into 2015. This is the 125th anniversary of the founding of the university. There will be a lot of celebrations later in the year having to do with acknowledging that fact, but we've actually become a rather distinguished and rather old university as universities go. But in doing so, we've become, it seems to be, all the more distinct and all the more special. The men and the women who founded this wonderful place 125 years ago wanted to create a university that would serve the people of the city of Chicago, but also the world. They wanted to create a university that would engender and stimulate the highest academic values. They wanted to create a place that would defend to the death the idea of academic freedom and the idea of scholarly rigor and the dedication to the life of the mind. But they were also convinced that such a university should do good in the world, that it should create the conditions and the possibilities for what William Rainey Harper, our founding president, called the higher civic life. And to do that, they thought that the kind of work that they were doing in the educational realm should quite naturally flow over into and have a very compelling and positive impact on the world beyond the academy and on the world beyond the university. And so events like that which we're doing today are very Harperian, if I could say it. They're very much anchored in the history of the university because they presume the extraordinary work that we do in the classes and laboratories and all across the campus on our academic front. They presume the great academic success that our alumni have had over the years, demonstrating the effectiveness of those educational programs. But they also show the power of that education in the world. And they show that the way in which one translates that power into the world is not simply on an individual basis, but also on a collective basis. It shows the power of the university coming together. It shows the power of the university acting as one community, as one university, as one culture, as a place, one in spirit, but also one in action, and one in belief. And so I'm very grateful for all of you to come out today. This is not only the 18th anniversary of the founding of this particular event, but it's very much an event that is very consonant with our history. It's consonant with the kind of values we esteem, and it's consonant with the purpose, the very special purpose of this university that has made us one of the great universities of the world. And not only one of the great universities of the world, but a very distinctive place, a place that believes not only in the life of the mind in a very passionate way, but that life of the mind can transform and improve human life in so many powerful ways. I want to conclude by saying that we're very grateful that so many of our second and third year students can join us. You can see there the banners of the class of 16 and 17. We're very proud of you. We know that a couple of years ago when you got the thick as opposed to thin emails, I guess that's what you get nowadays. You don't get envelopes anymore, you get emails. You had many choices and you chose this one and you chose well and you chose right, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Boyer. My name is Stephen, and I'm currently a fourth-year student in the college studying economics and law, letters, and society. As the fourth-year class chair for Taking the Next Step 2015, it is my privilege to introduce and welcome Dr. Amy Lehman, founder and CEO of the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic. Dr. Lehman studied in the college from 1992 to 1996, majoring in fundamentals, issues, and texts. She later returned to the University of Chicago to receive both an MD and an MBA in 2005, and stayed in the city to pursue positions at the University of Chicago Hospitals and the McLean Center for Clinical Medical Ethics. However, a transformative event to Central Africa would soon leave an indelible mark on her professional development. The Lake Tanganyika Basin area in Central Africa contains Africa's largest source of fresh water, countless endangered species, and abundant natural resources, in addition to the millions of people living on the shores of the lake. When Dr. Lehman witnessed the urgent need for healthcare in the region, she founded the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic to provide mobile support and offer medical services by boat. Her organization has continued to grow and is now internationally recognized for its expertise in the crucial region. Today, as worldwide attention and awareness towards Africa grows, the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic continues to partner with regional governments, local tribes, and multinational corporations to address the challenges of providing healthcare to Central Africa. Dr. Lehman's journey from the University of Chicago to Lake Tanganyika is a striking example of the power of belief and passion. While her founding of a floating health clinic in Africa may be a unique venture, I am confident that the skills that Dr. Lehman learned over the course of her career can be applied to our own paths beyond graduation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Amy Lehman, our keynote speaker for Taking the Next Step 2015.
I did a very U of C thing, which is that I went online and I watched a bunch of the other addresses that were given in the past couple of years. Being a kind of iconoclast, though, that didn't necessarily mean that I had my speech like fully written out or anything, because I don't. I just wanted to know, okay, what are people talking about here? What happens at this meeting? So I'm really pleased and honored to be here. Obviously, if you look at the string of U of C degrees after my name, it's clear that I had a problem cutting the cord with the institution. You know, and I have to say also, I was like, oh, well, there's a political operative that talked and like a professional comedian and performer that talked. You know, can I do my thing? Can I follow that? And I thought, you know, I'm just going to do what I always did, you know, at U of C, was to just kind of be my engin provocateur, rebellious self. So I want to tell you, all those people out there, all you freaks and weirdos and rebels and going to your own drum, black sheep, you know, this is for you. You can come and give a talk at your alma mater also, maybe at some point in the future. So one of the things that I'm just checking my time so I don't go over. I have to, you know, do that periodically. All right, so in listening to those other talks, which I in general agreed with the messaging, which is, okay, follow your passion. That's a phrase that people use a lot. And I am a very passionate person, so there's certainly a piece of me that believes deeply in that. And then this idea of the life of the mind, I also believe in that. But I think it's also more complex than that because we have a lot of pressing, difficult, contradictory choices to make in our lives and how we move forward both with our dreams and our aspirations as well as fulfilling our responsibilities and duties and ticking the boxes of things that we can't avoid, like paying rent, like paying for utilities, like paying for your child's education, stuff like that. These are all real things that are interacting with each other continually. So passion and openness and, not planning too much, look at me, I'm not going to contradict that. Do that. But it's also about something, much deeper and more rigorous as well. And I think it's also about a lot of hard choices that we are always facing. So my job, it's really hard to say what I do. It's true that I'm a doctor, and it's true that some of what I do is take care of sick people. But the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic's activities, are in one of the most complex parts of the world where this sort of intersection of politics and peace and security and, extreme poverty and, biodiversity and kind of water and energy security. It's all kind of there, and it's a very complex picture. And so part of my job really is to surf all of these different sectors and continually reinterpret the forest, for all of the potential stakeholders to the basin. And so I thought, because it's so hard to describe really honestly what I do, is I would tell you about this business trip that I just came back from last night. I was in London having ostensibly a whole series of meetings with, bankers and multinational companies and famous architects and all this kind of stuff, okay? So that's true. I did have all those meetings with all these people, and I was running around like a maniac from thing to thing. And at one time, I'm talking with a very large multinational telecom company about why it's worth their while to put up 100 cell phone towers around Lake Tanganyika that doesn't actually have comprehensive mobile coverage. Here's a place in the world where there isn't actually mobile coverage. People are always shocked to hear that, but they exist. So I'm talking to this company and saying, why is it in your best interest to put up these cell phone towers around Lake Tanganyika? And then on another hand, I'm talking to somebody who's become quite a famous architect, and I'm saying, why do you need to participate in the design team of this creation of this floating regional hospital? Why should you care about this? I'm doing that. And then in between, all of these completely crazy and random things are happening. So I had a meeting with a banker, a fancy London banker, who, wants to get involved with the organization. But then what happened instead is that 2/3 of this very lengthy dinner meeting that we had was taken up by the fact that this man was actually very ill. He was very physically ill. And he had been suffering and in and out of the hospital a number of times. And he hadn't talked really about this with anyone, even his children. And he had been, and he had nearly died. And so, I had a choice at that time at the dinner where I could ignore all of these signs and symptoms, right, that I am actually trained to recognize. And I could also ignore, a sort of, human compassion, right, for this person who, like, I wanted something from, right? And instead, we spent all this time trying to talk about, what to do about what was really wrong. He didn't understand what had happened. He didn't have the right kind of support. And so I said, let's just work on this problem, okay? And so by the time I left at the end of the week, he has a new doctor, he has a new care plan, and he's gonna get better. And so I'm like, yes, that was good. We solved that problem. But that's not, when you design, like, okay, I'm going to talk to this fancy London banker, this is what I'm gonna talk about. The other thing is, that I saw, I saw some friends from college, one of my very close college friends, I dashed to see, their new baby. And then I saw a friend from, boarding school who'd been, having some trouble. And then I met with another person who turns out he had a health problem. And so it's like you try to game out, okay, how am I, what's happening here? How am I getting from A to B? What's the story? What's the storyline? And sometimes you don't know. And in fact, sometimes you so don't know that, there were really great things happening. Like the multinational company is interested in putting up the 100 cell phone towers. Yes, that's a thumbs up. That's very good. But at the same time, I also spent the last few nights when I was in London on the phone because I had a suicidal friend. Okay, and so, so I'm, being a corporate raider, negotiating things, all day and like figuring this out and, making my organization move forward and be productive. And yet, look, here's somebody, very close to me who's an individual person who, like the banker who I hardly knew, but here is somebody who I knew, somebody very important and close to me was, deeply suffering. And so I came back from this trip last night, and I thought, okay, what am I going to talk about at this speech? And in fact, upon reflection, I think that the trip that I took to London was very like my first year at UC in the college. So on one hand, there's like all the great straightforward stuff, okay? Like I got straight A's, yes. I went to bed early, I got up early, I went to the gym. I was like, disgustingly earnest about my studies, like really. Like I grossed out even, my classmates at the UC, so that's like really earnest, okay? And so like on the surface, like it's like, okay, we know this storyline. But I'll tell you, that wasn't the whole story. Because I'll tell you some other things that happened freshman year. I worked as an exotic dancer. Yes, I did. I worked as an exotic dancer in a number of nightclubs in Chicago. And I did that to make extra money, okay? And let me tell you, it was a very interesting experience. I would dress up, I wore chaps to class. I mean, my poor professors, Jesus Christ. But I wore, like these totally outlandish outfits to class, all the time. It was like I was like entertaining myself. I was like, love the U of C, but it is a little bit of an aesthetic wasteland. I'm just gonna stir it up a little bit, and wear these really outrageous outfits to class every day. And I also had a lot of friends who were in crisis around me. The pressure of school, of the schoolwork and expectations and, pressures and expectations of their parents and things like that. And also my freshman year, an upper class woman who was the roommate of one of my closest friends that first year, she actually committed suicide. So what does this tell me? That life is great, life is beautiful, and life is brutal. And, you know, now and I'll get you saying, well, like, be Manichaean about it, right? Like, good and evil, darkness and lightness, and all this kind of stuff. In fact, I think that's this idea that there is a constant push and pull in all of our lives. And that sometimes negotiating all of these variables all the time is really hard and confusing, you know. And so even this idea of how do I even allocate my time? You know, how much time am I supposed to spend studying? How much time am I supposed to spend, you know, comforting a friend? You know, how much time am I supposed to spend, like, making money? How much, you know, how am I supposed to balance all of these things? So I think this question of, you know, how do we engage with the good and the bad, and how do we balance out the passion, the follow your passion, with also the responsibilities and the constraints that exist in the world, and that is hard, and to me, that process of that balance of the choosing between everything there is out there in the world and carving a path, you know, that's not a, you know, a 15 or 20-minute talk, right? That's the job of a lifetime. You know, but for me, in terms of the way that I approach, you know, my own life and choices and balance, again, you know, for didactic purposes, I was like, can I think of, you know, some kind of, you know, term or, you know, whatever. And so this is at, you know, 5:30 in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee. I'm jet lagged. I'm like, you know, what is my didactic message? And really, so I'm going to call it the 3 E's. That's what came to me this morning at the crack of dawn in the dark. And what are the 3 E's? Empathy, education, and experience. And I think that I have, you know, tried to take that tack throughout all of my higher education. And so when I say empathy, you know, I really mean it in a deep, deep way. I mean it as, you know, do you have a connection and deep interest in other human beings in the world? You know, the people who are immediately around you and also people who might even be far away. Like when you meet people and you talk to them, you know, what is the nature of that exchange? And I have to say that if somebody said, what's the single most important tool that has brought you to the place where you are today, I would actually give empathy the pole position. And so let me just give you some examples of like what that really means to me. So I work in a part of the world that's had, you know, civil war, physical insecurity, horrible violence, you know, some of the worst kind of humanitarian mortality, you know, since World War II. And a lot of really terrible things have happened there. One of my employees is a Congolese guy who is a former child soldier. He was a child soldier between the age of 12 and 14. And the reason why he ended up going into the army is kind of multifold, including not really his full free choice, but had to do with a lot of circumstances of the war. He also speaks 16 languages, 16. And he, in addition to having that experience, he was a refugee in East Africa, and then came back to Congo and went to the University of Lubumbashi and got a degree in international law. This person, as you can imagine, you know, there's like a lot packed in there, right? And for us to work together, you know, and for him to feel comfortable and to really believe in this joint exercise that we're involved in, you know, he does have to believe that I deeply care for him and him as a person, and you know, him professionally, and the way that we get to empathy requires a lot of humility and listening, and also, you know, using all of my experiences and all the skills, right, to, you know, also try to get there. But, you know, on the surface, like, he and I have nothing in common either, right? My growing up experience was nothing like that. You know, I guess the other example of it is like this banker, right, who I didn't even know, and who is really not a main part of my life. And this idea of, you know, community and social responsibility, but also expressing that through individual relationships. And, you know, when I was a surgical resident, for example, you know, real empathy can make the difference between, you know, hurting or helping your patient. And that's because if you think about patients who are in their most vulnerable condition, and they have a lot of information that you need to know about in order for you to, you know, create an effective care plan, if they don't believe that you actually care for them and they feel safe and comfortable with who you are, they're not going to tell you really important things. And so I remember one day particularly when I went to go interview a woman who was about to have surgery, quite an elderly woman, like maybe in her early 80s. And she was having a general surgery operation. And I talked to her, you know, and after I was done talking to her, and it wasn't that long, it was maybe 10, 15 minutes. And so then I went to anesthesia, the anesthesia team, and I said, you know, hey, just want to close the loop here. You know that Mrs. So-and-so smokes crack 3 times a week. And they said, no. We had no idea. And let me say that when you're giving anesthesia to somebody, particularly somebody in their early 80s, you want to know if they're smoking crack 3 times a week, okay? It's really important. You know, not important in a judgmental way, right? Because again, I think real empathy tells you that the reason why somebody is smoking crack 3 times a week, is probably complicated, right? Like, this person is a complicated person with a complicated life. But don't assume, right, anything about anybody you meet, and don't judge them, and be open and sort of, you know, be empathic. And so for me, that was one of these, there was a very granular example of what it meant to give people the space to talk about who they are without judgment. So yeah, so that's kind of my #1 pole position feeling about, you know, how we should interact. But at the same time, I'm really into education. And, you know, I actually believe in rigor and facts. And I think, you know, and why am I here? We were talking about all of these, you know, things at the table, and everyone's like, oh, I really see your whole fundamentals thing coming out. And I'm like, yeah, I totally drink the Kool-Aid. I totally do. About liberal education and about the idea of being broadly knowledgeable about many, many things, and using, you know, that that nuanced, sophisticated, broad knowledge to make your specialty more deep and nuanced, because all of these things, to a certain extent, are important. You know, there are jobs out there, you know, where it is possible to be extremely, extremely narrow in what you do. But really, most of the jobs out there, you know, that touch human beings in any way or another, right, all that liberal education, God, it totally matters. You know, and it matters in all of these completely random ways. It matters in all these deep, lofty ways. But it also matters sometimes on the margin in really weird ways. Like, I was at a meeting with a potential funder, okay? And she, you know, pulls out this, like, embroidered tapestry thing to be like, look at my private book collection and all of these things that I'm really interested in. And I was like, oh, that's the allegory of good and bad government in Siena at the Palazzo Pubblico. And she was like, you're the only person who's ever known that. And I was like, thank God for my liberal education. So yeah, but I mean, but the facts matter, right? The facts really do matter. And I think that there's this interplay between education and empathy as well. You know, part of what enables me to achieve, I think, an authentic, empathic relationship with my Congolese employee is also because I essentially put myself through like a PhD in the Great Lakes of Africa. You know, I learned about everything that was happening. I read 20 books. I talked to so many people. I knew about the politics. I knew about the different ethnic groups. I knew about the community, you know, kind of core seeds of some of these issues of conflict and discontent. And I also knew these kind of larger international issues that were also at play. And those facts actually really do help me be more empathic to this person, because I understand the context of his reality. And you can't really do that without facts. And then, you know, so this last idea, which is, you know, experience, being out in the world. I gave my commencement address with 2 other colleagues, okay? And I wrote about something very specific in my speech, which was the unity of theory and practice. And I was very, very interested in that because I became a parent in between my sophomore and junior year in the college. I had my son, Max. And so I had the first half of my experience as a college student, and then this very different experience during the second half of my career in the college. And becoming a mother at that time was very, very, you know, deep, intense, and interesting, as I think becoming a parent in general is. But it forced me to really examine, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I at the college? What am I doing? You know, why should I leave my house, you know, and go to class every day? And what are my goals? And what are my responsibilities towards this person that I have brought into the world? And so when I graduated, I felt that my message, you know, the answer to that question that I'd been asking myself is that there is a very crucial role for both. And that the theory and the facts need to go hand in hand with the reality and the empathy and the experience, because that, I think, is what imbues you with the tools to find your pathway through what is, you know, a complex and turbulent world. And so kind of beginning this conceit with, the world is beautiful, the world is brutal. How do we make our way? The answer to me is that you're mobilizing all of these different qualities and skills, and your experience in the world and your connection with others, and you will make your path. And it might change, and there might be circumstances beyond your control and all that kind of stuff. But if you can surf all of these elements and nuances of how you look at the world, it's going to be okay. It will turn out all right. And so this is sort of this experience is this kind of synthetic opportunity to put, facts and passion together that can reveal to you something that will be meaningful to you, in your lives. So I just hate prepared talks so much. And I so enjoy just talking to people and having real dialogues and conversations about all of these big issues in life. And I knew that I couldn't do that. I mean, there are way too many of you. But you should always take that opportunity to have conversations with each other and with people you meet, and you should never be afraid to ask kind of deep and probing questions in an empathic way. And if you do that, you'd just be amazed at what you're going to continue to learn even after you graduate, and even as you're going through all these practical experiences. You'll always have that. And then, finally, I want to end with some myth busting at the college. The myth will be over when I am done speaking. And you can maybe say that I've waited over 20 years. I've waited close to 25 years to say that I thought this myth was bollocks, as they say in London, where I just came from. The plaque on the floor of the Reynolds Club? Okay? How you're standing in the Reynolds Club and you see all of these swarming ant-like human beings who are racing to get places, but then you see whoop, no one will walk on the plaque because you won't graduate in 4 years. Okay, I walked on the plaque. I walked on the plaque all the time. I walked on the plaque every chance I got to walk on the plaque. And not only did I graduate in 4 years, but I had a baby by myself, and I graduated in 4 years. So, it's over. You can walk on the plaque, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lehman. Thank you, Dr. Lehman, for traveling here and sharing your wisdom and experiences with us. Your words and your careers are truly inspiring. Thank you also to alumni who have come from across the country to gather in this room. We're so glad you are here. The purpose of taking the next step is to enable students to explore career interests. I'm sure that by sharing your stories, you will broaden many students' career horizons, as you have for me. My name is Joshua Chu, and I'm a student in the class of 2017, and I'm the second-year co-chair for this event. I'm glad to see many of my classmates have come today. I believe this is a great time to discover more about what your future after graduation might look like and what your professional career might be. We'll soon move on to the next portion of our program, the alumni panels. As you conclude conversations with the alumni at your table, please take some time to review the alumni bios and choose which panels you will attend. The schedule is designed so that you can attend 2 panels, which are separated by a 30-minute break. Panel session A will be from 12:30 to 1:45 p.m., And industries represented by the panels in this session include business, applied sciences, and law, among others. After this, panel session B will be from 2:15 to 3:30 p.m. And industries represented include government, consulting, research sciences, among others. Please take a look at your pamphlet for the full list. To my fellow students, please consider questions you might have for the alumni in your chosen panels. Asking appropriate questions and participating actively will help you deepen your understanding of your specific areas of professional interest. My hope is that you will continue your exploration of career options after today's event. Perhaps you can spend the weekend researching on Google or send some emails to family and friends regarding new things you've learned here or discovered here. Buses will be returning to campus starting at 12:30 and leaving on a half hour until after the final panels have concluded around 4 p.m. If you would like to stay downtown, remember that the university's South Loop shuttle will be leaving every hour starting at 6:30 p.m. from the Roosevelt L station. Or if you plan to return to Hyde Park, remember to take advantage of the first weekend event on 53rd Street. Finally, on behalf of my fellow co-chairs, I'd like to thank the college programming office, and the career advancement, along with our staff and student coordinators for putting together this wonderful event. On behalf of the college and the Taking the Next Step Planning Committee, thank you again to Dr. Lehman and all our alumni volunteers. We hope you all have a wonderful, engaging, and enriching time here at Taking the Next Step. Thank you.